Welcome to KoshienCast, the world's best and only sports anime fan podcast. My name is Matt, and joining me today is a very special guest, Matt.
Hey!
Alright, so it is week 4 of the fall anime season. We're going to be covering all the new sports anime that premiered between October 23rd and October 29th. It has... I don't know. It's been an interesting week overall. Just to say up front, one of the things you notice is that a lot of anime productions put a lot of their resources into the first 3 episodes, and then you sort of see a little break as they set up the next arc on episode 4. So you've seen, I think there's been some mix in quality, and so it'll be interesting to see what stayed consistent from last week and what sort of saw a drop off. But anyway, before that, I think, Matt, you were going to identify a couple adjustments we're making to experiment with the format this week.
Yeah, basically, we were kind of listening back to it, and we kind of decided we were going to try changing up the format just a little bit. Before, we were kind of putting all of our favorite stuff towards the end, just because we wanted to end on a positive note, and we kind of decided, you know what, people probably don't care that much. People aren't listening to this to listen to us talk about Days and Tiger Mask.
Right.
So we've decided we're still early on trying this out and everything, so we decided we were going to try and put all the stuff that's really popular or the stuff that we really like up front. That also kind of gives us a little bit more room to talk, because we don't like going over an hour and a half. So putting the stuff we actually really like up front means that we have more time to discuss it. Because that was one of the things that we ran into last week, was that we really wanted to talk a lot more about Yuri on Ice and Haikyu, but we just didn't have... We really had to wrap it up quickly.
Yeah, that happens when you spend 20 minutes discussing the minutia of Tiger Mask W. And I'm blaming myself for that, because we just got caught up in the things we didn't like or the things that surprised us about Tiger Mask W and Days and I think they were getting a disproportionate amount of attention.
Yeah, especially when they're some of the least popular or least interesting things out there. Well, Days is interesting. It's a bad interesting, but it's interesting.
Yeah, right.
But also, we're also doing a slightly different format this time as well. So this week, we're going to try having Matt do all of the introductions for the series, rather than splitting it between the two of us. Because we kind of decided that our strengths were better suited. Basically, Matt's better, I think, at the introductions and the plot summaries and getting all the story beats, whereas I personally really like looking at all of the camera techniques and stuff like that. So rather than having us solely devote our attention to one series, we split it up. So now Matt will be leading all of the discussions this week.
Right. So no promises that will stay the same for next week. We're just going to see how this goes. The other facet of this is I'm going to try to keep my summaries much shorter than we have in the past, because I think one trap we fell into was spending too much time summarizing an episode and mixing in our editorial remarks with just the plot summary. So I'm gonna focus just on getting the plot out of the way quickly, and then we can go back and editorialize. The other note is, of course, since I'm not watching Keijo, Matt will be summarizing Keijo.
Yes, that is correct.
So, I think that pretty much covers announcements, but all that being said, I'd like to just dive right into Yuri on Ice.
Awesome, let's do it.
Alright, so like I said, it's sort of a break. We had the first arc where we set up the main characters, and Yuri sort of established himself with this coaching partnership with Victor. And so Victor is going to stay in Japan and help Yuri develop his new program. But in order to develop a new program, Yuri needs to select new music. He needs to create new choreography. And Victor wants to help him with that, but he insists that Yuri pick his own music. Meanwhile, Yurio is back in Russia, and he needs to start a new training program in order to get ready for the new season. So his old coach, Yakov, has Yurio study ballet. They sort of split off, and the whole episode is parallel back and forth. Yurio is learning ballet. Yuri is trying to figure out what music he'll use for his new routine. He ends up contacting a girl he knew in Detroit and using some classical music that she made for him specifically. And by the end of the episode, Yuri finds out that he's been assigned to a couple tournaments throughout the year. One in China, where he's going to compete against his old friend from Detroit from Taiwan named Pitchit, and one in Russia, where he's going to compete against Yurio directly, as well as a couple competitions in Japan. So this sort of sets up the arc and the different competitions he'll be going through for the rest of the series. The episode ends with Yuri acknowledging that this may be his last season. Yurio similarly acknowledges that he's going to be limited because he's going through puberty and his body's changing and he needs to capitalize on his skill while he has it. And then it ends with Yuri deciding on the name for this song that his friend from America made, and he names the song, you guessed it,
Yuri on Ice.
Exactly. Yuri on Ice. Thanks, Matt.
No problem.
So yeah, so what did you think of episode 4?
This is a really interesting episode. It, as you mentioned, as we kind of touched upon already, this was a setup episode where we are starting to see everything fall into place now. We're starting to see where the plot is going beyond just trying to impress Victor. And there's a lot of really interesting things about that. Like, I like, for example, seeing how, at the end of the episode, how he has to go up against the very guy, basically his own contrast as he is to Victor. How Victor is sort of this old guard that's like this legend of ice skating, and he's just sort of beginning his new, he's kind of his final chapter. Yeah. He's going up against a skater who's basically this hotshot up and coming skater who's already shown himself to who's kind of embarrassed him on a world stage.
So you're referring to the other Japanese skater that he's going to have to compete against first.
Yes, that is correct.
So because Yuri ended the last season poorly, he still has to do some qualifiers in Japan. I didn't totally understand the details of the tournament mechanic. They sort of flew through it pretty quick, but the takeaway is that the first tournament arc is going to be in Japan itself, just with Japanese skaters.
Right.
And so yeah, he's competing against this younger skater who's presumably trying to take Yuri's spot as the top ranked Japanese skater.
Right. And so I kind of like that sort of dichotomy there. It'll be interesting to see where that goes. I won't lie though, I'm a little bit more interested to see how he interacts with his friend from Detroit.
Pitch it.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And not only that, I'm also really interested to see where this goes with his sister. It was kind of interesting to see that even though Yuri is very inexperienced romantically, there have been all these hints that he has at the very least had something of a romantic life. Like, there was some sort of implication there that Pitchett's sister may have had like a thing for
You
him?
mean in Detroit?
Yeah, in Detroit.
So maybe I missed it. I don't think that was Pitchett's sister.
I thought they had mentioned that it was his sister. I'm nearly positive they had mentioned that it was his sister. But, I mean, it's not really that important.
Yeah, well, there was... I might be conflating characters, because this was separate from the girl who composed his music.
Was it? I guess I thought that was the whole thing that they were getting at.
Okay, we are clearly not understanding this properly. Whoever that girl was, I guess it was the same character. I must have missed the line where they said it was Pitchett's sister.
It wasn't really like a big detail, so I don't really blame you. I kind of paused the episode, if I recall, because I wanted to make a couple notes there. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that they said that she was his sister. But I thought that was interesting because Yuri goes into this whole conversation where he has to kind of admit, look, I didn't really want to pursue this thing with her. Like, I felt very embarrassed by the fact that...
She was very into him.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and I didn't know, like, there was this whole conversation that they had where, I forget, somebody was in the hospital, and she was looking to comfort him, and he sort of pulls away because he doesn't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't, because he feels embarrassed by the fact that he needs comforting, and he doesn't want to show that to somebody. Right. And it goes into this whole, this running theme of the series about gender roles. About the fact, like, just last episode, he had to sort of embrace the fact that he has a bit more of a feminine personality. And this is him kind of coming to grips with the fact, like, yeah, in the past, I used to have, like, this really, like, strange view.
Well, I think it was on some level when you talk about him reacting and not wanting to appear weak in front of a girl, it was sort of like him trying to push, like, to butch it up, like trying to seem tougher than he really was.
Right.
Because he was under the impression that that's what he was supposed to be. So yeah, it's totally about gender roles.
Right.
It's interesting too to see the way those two characters, they sort of had a falling out because he didn't have the confidence to use the music that she made for him, even though he wanted to. He was discouraged by his coaches, and so he just gave up. He didn't have the confidence. He didn't end up using the music, and he told her that, and they sort of had a falling out just because, as he said, well, it was just awkward after that. And so I think there's a lot of question there. You know, the last episode very strongly communicated that Yuri has some, I guess, unprocessed homosexual attraction towards Victor specifically, but also just in general. And
well, because it's interesting because, like, going along those lines, because Victor's the only person he's actually able to open up to about
this. Yeah, exactly.
And so, there's a lot of gender reversal in this series, I've noticed, because I don't know, there is a lot, in this episode, I noticed a lot of very sexually empowered women. For example, we have that one girl whose name I did not catch, but she was there watching Yuri. She was there. She was apparently, like, friends with Yuri.
Mila.
What was her name? Oh, Mila. Oh, I did get that written down. My bad. She was, like, dating a hockey player, and, you know, she's not having sex right now, and so she's kind of come to see Yurio to vent out his frustrations, or the ex-ballerina that apparently Yurio's coach was originally married to, who apparently, like, left him. And it's, like, it's interesting to see, because we were kind of talking about this last episode about the whole, like, female gaze. And I know one of the big appeals of, like, boys love and yaoi to a lot of girls is that they feel like that guys are unable to open up to girls in Japan. Like, that's where a lot of the appeal comes from. And so they write the guys being attracted to guys with the intention of basically like, the girls are basically writing it to self-insert themselves into the guys.
Yeah, you just write one of the guys as a feminine character.
Right, exactly, because it's actually more believable to a lot of girls there that guys can be more sensitive with other guys. Right. And I feel like the series is trying to address that.
Yeah.
And we're seeing
it's interesting to see, like you said, and that was interesting you brought it up, that the guys are learning to be more comfortable with their feminine side, and the women, insofar as they're featured, are shown to be, I guess, much less traditionally submissive or traditionally feminine.
I mean, like, for example, like, last episode, the only character we've even seen, like, doing, like, the traditional, like, perving out over, like, hot people was Yuki, who was basically nosebleeding over the fact that she was seeing, like, one of Victor's, like, sexiest costumes. Right. So it's interesting to see how the series is kind of trying to turn around and kind of accept the fact. It feels like the series feels almost like it's trying to reclaim sports series for girls, essentially.
Yeah. What did you? I think that's all totally accurate. What did you think of the scene on the beach where Yuri and Victor are talking, and Victor basically asks, "What do you want me to be to you? Do you want me to be like your brother, like your father?" And then, Yuri's like, "No, no." And then Victor says, "Well, do you want me to be your lover? Do you want me to be your boyfriend?" And Yuri's like, "No, no, 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 no." Like he just gets sort of scared.
Right.
What did you take anything from that?
I didn't think of anything of it before, but you bringing it up kind of makes it feels almost like a dog whistle to Yaoi fans. So because I think it's supposed to be taken as a double meaning. Like, so for example, a lot of like mainstream series in Japan, I've learned about this. A lot of series do a lot better when they're not confronting issues like that. Like, if you try, because one of the biggest arguments I've seen against stuff like yaoi and boys love is like, well, why don't you just like go full on like hardcore gay
Right.
sex, essentially. And one of the reasons they don't do that is because those are just not financially stable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a lot of people don't put out stuff like
Sure,
that.
of course, because it's just
And
porn.
so,
That's a whole different thing.
right, exactly. So I kind of see it as like a dog whistle, in that we have to keep up this front.
Oh, that it's
that
not
Yuri
gay.
is not interested. Yeah, exactly. We kind of have to keep this up.
Yeah, it's like plausible deniability.
Right, exactly. No, he's not gay. See, he has relationships. He's been attracted to other girls, and it's like, well, yeah,
But you
kind of,
frame it in
but
a way where if you're watching the show and for whatever if you need to believe that Yuri is straight or just non-sexual, you can. They put enough in there
Right.
that you can, but if you're looking for it to be what the author probably intends it to be, then there's a lot there just a fraction of an inch
Right.
below the surface.
Right, exactly. And I think that's an interesting. I think Yuri has been a very interesting case because a lot of series like All Out, which we'll get into later, like they make it feel very cheap and just sort of tacked into the series in order to like jack up merch sales.
Sure.
Whereas I feel like Yuri on Ice is it feels like it's embraced it.
Yeah.
And it's actually kind of doing an interesting gender study as a result of it. It reminds me a little bit as a much more flamboyant version of Battery from last season, almost in that regard.
Oh yeah, I mean, Battery was subtle. Until about episode 10, it was very subtle, but it kept things very symbolic and sort of talking around a lot of issues. And this is
Right.
not interested in talking around anything.
No, it is being very upfront about it, but also kind of giving winks to the audience, like, oh no, we can't have these characters like be with one another, but they're clearly getting to it. So I'm almost intrigued just to see how it goes, just on the basis that it's almost like a will they won't they thing for me.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not as concerned with whether the two main characters end up in a relationship, quote unquote, because I think there's going to be a lot. We're going to learn a lot more about Victor, and he's going to become much less of a sort of magical super character than he is now. So I doubt that they'll end up in a stable relationship. I just hope they don't completely betray their fans who are looking for some positive gay representation.
I mean, something else that's really interesting along those lines, and the fact that this is filmed with kind of this female gaze, Victor, you can see his nipples, which is actually, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, you don't see nipples, like male nipples in anime.
Sure. I didn't notice that, actually.
Oh yeah, no, I noticed it immediately. Because even with like bare-chested dudes, when they do that, they don't draw the nipple.
Well, I noticed.
That's taboo.
Yeah, I guess when his shirt was off. Yeah, you're right.
Or it's like in the second episode, there's a very obvious moment where he's like leaning into Yuri and his kimono comes a little undone, and there's just a tiny drop of nipple there that you see, and again that's done in a way it's like that's kind of the traditional like sexy Japanese geisha stereotype that's being kind of turned around on its head.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, overall, I thought episode 4 was interesting, but mostly just functioned as setup. It's nice
Right.
to know where we're going, and so now we don't have to keep coming back to re-identify what's next. We know what's next. It's Japan, and then China, and then Russia's gonna end the season. And so it's gonna be
Right.
relatively simple, straightforward from here on out. Hopefully, the animation took a little bit of a dip. There wasn't as much focus on actual skating. And that's okay. It's okay with me as long as next week can sort of bring it back up to speed. But I thought it set it up well. I thought what was there in terms of the thematic content was solid, and it didn't take a step back from anything last week, which is good.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you want to move on to Haikyuu?
Oh, heck yeah.
All right, so the summary for this one is actually relatively brief. It's a lot of details, but functionally it's just the end of the second set. So
Right.
the Karasuno and Shiratorizawa have gotten near the end of the second set. It's about 23-22 at the start of the episode. And they fight it. They keep adding new strategies on both sides throughout the episode, trying to outsmart each other, but no one can get a decisive advantage. They end up tying at 24 points apiece, which in volleyball is where you get a deuce, right?
Yeah.
So that's the equivalent for tennis, and so in order to break, the team has to score 2 points in a row, and they find themselves completely unable to do this. So every time one team scores a point, the other team will score one right back, and they do this all the way up past 25, 26, 27, and they keep going. Shiratorizawa brings in pinch server, but even that can't make the difference. And then Suki really becomes the central character in this episode, where he learns to strategize his blocks and time the group blocks along the front to an advantage, where they then have the advantage against Shiratorizawa's spikes for once. Ultimately, the set breaks where Karasuno wins the set 31-29. Basically because Suki on Karasuno is able to annoy and stress out Shiratorizawa's spikers so much that eventually they make a mistake, and then Hinata and Nishinoya are able to punish them for those mistakes.
Right.
So that was pretty much it. That's the whole episode. Is Karasuno wins the second set by being able to endure that stress. But I think you probably have some opinions about the details of how that was executed that are really what makes it interesting.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So I'm just gonna say this right now. It has been a very strong season for Haikyuu, but this so far has been my favorite episode. There is so much energy in this episode with just the way it's shot, and then just the immensely satisfying moment of emotion for Suki that we see at the very end of the episode, where he gets that block off of Ushiwaka. That is just. I'm just gonna jump right into how they did that, because that was I don't mean to gush too much here, but that was such a masterful moment.
Go ahead.
With how they performed.
All right, so set it up for me.
So basically, before this begins, we have an extreme close-up shot of Suki just slowly zooming in towards his face, and the look on his face can only be described as like starving. Like he looks like he's at like the brink of madness, which is interesting for Suki because he has always been such a restrained, like doesn't care character.
Oh yeah, super passive. It's like basically until this point in the series, he's always sort of complained about people being too enthusiastic. He's always been saying, this is just a club sport, who cares, why are you getting so riled up, that sort of things,
right?
Not trying to really devote his whole emotional well-being to it like the other characters.
Yeah, exactly. He's always just treated it as a club. And this is the moment where we see from Suki that this is becoming more than just a club to him. Because right after that block, how they shoot his outburst, that growing, it's like just that moment of silence, and then we get that shot of the camera behind him, and as he's screaming, just at like the top of his lungs, we see the camera even starting to shake along with the scream. Like almost as if though the camera can't even contain this energy coming from him. And you just see this very deliberate motion from his arms. Just shaking, like quivering. Just that combined with the camera motion, like with the shaking cam as he's just screaming, is just... It's like, I had to rewatch that moment a couple of times because I was shaking watching this.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. It was a really satisfying end. I think I might have said it earlier, but I assumed that Karasuno was going to lose the first two so that they had to make a dramatic comeback. But this is actually way more interesting where it's really neck and neck.
Yeah, exactly. Because the original author had the foresight to not drag this out so much. Because, okay, so I adore Ice Shield 21. It is one of my all-time favorite sports manga. That is a bad habit that the series gets into, though, where they are losing the entire game, and then at a certain point they decide to just start turning it around. Haikyu is smart about keeping the tension up by making it so that you do not know what's going to happen next. And part of being able to do that is know when to let your characters win, in addition to when they lose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they don't just win at the end.
Right, exactly. Like, because, as soon as they said, there's a line in the episode where the characters blatantly say, it's like, they cannot lose this set. Yeah. I thought for certain at that point, it's like, well, they just lost the set.
Yeah, exactly, of course.
It's like, this set is basically to show that they've learned how to keep up with Shiratorizawa, but not actually, like, stay there. Like they haven't gotten there quite yet, and then they're just going to have to win over the course of the next 3 sets. And I'm guessing that's still what's gonna what happen, but, it's like, I can't say for certain, because they were smart enough to actually let them win this set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely throws off sort of some of your expectations. I think one of the things I like, if just talking about the episode on the whole, and we've alluded to it, is that you finally get to see that Shiratorizawa isn't invincible. Because every perception up till now is that even, you have to work around Ushijima / Ushiwaka. Like, you need to work around their ace because he's undefeatable. And finally you saw at the end of the episode, no, actually, you can figure him out. Even he can be defeated and contained. There's nothing about the other team that is unbeatable. And it's so much more fun. Right. Sometimes sports anime have this habit of creating these Goliath teams or these Goliath individuals that are just too unimaginably good, and they have to come up with some magical way of defeating them. But to me, it's actually more fun when the other team is just a good team. Like, they're a good team just like the main team is a good team. And so they really have to figure each other out and be strategic. And so they have strengths and weaknesses, but you don't have any of the sort of the magic all-powerful team that to me gets boring.
Right, exactly. And I really appreciate kind of going back to the Suki outburst here. I really appreciate how they kind of almost put off this moment of character development for Suki just for this single game.
Yeah, they put it off for 2 seasons.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we were starting to see a little bit of that in season 2, but I really appreciate how the series has connected just the downfall of this team to Suki's like development as like a player and as a character, to finally appreciate, it's like, this is what it means to take down one of the greatest. Yeah. And I am loving this.
Yeah, no, it's Haikyu is the season feels like a victory lap for this show. Because it does everything you love about the way Haikyu was done in the past. It does very well still. It has amazing animation. all the characters are where you want them to be. It really feels like this is as good as Haikyu has ever been. And this episode specifically, like the animation was unbelievable. I mean, I love the way that they animate how the characters on Karasuno are stretching themselves to their absolute limits in order to reach these balls and keep them in play.
Right.
It shows them crashing through barriers and stretching and falling on the ground, and just the way it's done, it feels extremely vivid, and it's like we sort of talk about. Animation works when you can feel the hits, and you can feel all the hits in this show.
Oh yeah, and one thing I just like to point out as well, regarding that, something I really appreciate is that, so the ball in this is actually CG, but you don't really notice that watching it. I only notice it because I'm actually keeping an eye out for it. But it's amazing how well they deal with how the ball moves.
Yeah.
As opposed to something like, I'm
It's
sorry
all
to
out,
keep dumping on the series. Yeah, it's all out, I know. But it's just the way that the ball moves, because they're smart enough to keep it just constantly in motion, constantly spinning around, and give it a very simple design. Just, it's just blue and yellow, kind of moving together. And they're able to get away with still leaving the ball with all this, impact and momentum.
Yeah.
Just one other thing I wanted to point out. Sorry.
I was just going to say my one complaint.
Go for it.
The one thing that frustrated me in season 2 was that it leaned a little too heavily on the symbolism, like throwing the symbolism in your face.
Oh.
And they sort of do that again, where they try to explain Karasuno's strategy as mobbing. When a murder of crows attack a bird of prey. Exactly the scene that happens in the opening animation theme.
Yeah.
So it's a little on the nose.
Well, at the very least, this season we don't have to deal with the battle at the garbage dump.
Have to battle. No battle at the garbage dump, and no extended sequence showing a clock and all the gears coming together and clicking. And I'm like, we get it. They're all pieces of the same team. We know. So, honestly, it's not that bad. It has eschewed most of the frustrating symbolism from season 2, but just to see it rear its ugly head again, I was like, no, not again.
Yeah, no, I get that. It's still, it's a minor complaint.
It is an absolutely minor complaint, but that's the thing. Every complaint about Haikyu is minor because it's a freaking amazing show.
And I'm really glad to see that it's taken off so well too.
Yeah. It's the most popular show in Canada.
This is also one of the most popular.
It's the most popular show in Canada.
Yeah, there you go.
Anime anyway.
And strangely not Yuri on Ice.
Yeah, exactly. So, you're gonna move on to March Comes In Like a Lion?
Let's do it.
Okay, so episode 4, like every episode before it, is split between two between two arcs. In the first story, the gang are all together at Akari's house, and they are peeling chestnuts and discussing the fact that Hina wants to make lunch for a boy on the baseball team she has a crush on. They argue about whether the family should be spending money on food for some boy. And they reveal in this conversation that Akari, the eldest sister, takes in animals off the street and then plumps them up. And Hina wonders whether that's why she took in Ray too, which, anyway. Then the next day, Hina tries to prepare this lunch, and it's all very chaotic and silly. She eventually does get to the baseball field. Ray sees her watching the game. He realizes that she's in love with this boy. Then he has a very strange short flashback to a time where it appears he was sexually assaulted by an older woman. And then we're back to silliness. And Hina is sad because she can't give the boy the bento box, and she cries. And then they take it home and eat it together, but the bento's actually gross. So that's part 1. And then the second story Nikaido comes over to practice with Rei. Rei doesn't want to because he likes to practice alone, classic Rei. But Nikaido does it anyway, and they're very silly together, and then they go get lunch. And they, of course, run into the only other people in this town, and they see Momo and Akari. Momo thinks that Nikaido is Totoro because he's overweight.
No, she doesn't. She thinks he's, Botoro.
Yeah, okay.
It's Totoro.
Yes. And then Akari immediately has a crush on Nikaido, also because he's overweight. They take Nikaido home and Akari makes Nikaido a bland meal. That in quotes, that's what she says, because he has a very sensitive stomach. And then his butler picks him up from their house due to the power of illegal surveillance. And that's the episode. That's the actual plot of the episode.
I mean, you didn't really miss anything there. You're not wrong.
Yeah, it just... all I want to say up front, and I'll just turn it over to you, is that this feels so fundamentally different than the first episode. The first episode felt like it was going to, like, in all caps, ask hard questions about mental health. And this... I don't even know what this is anymore. I'm gonna have to think about it. What did you think?
I still liked the episode. I do agree that it was a bit of a downturn from the last couple episodes. Just on the basis that there wasn't really much interesting anything all that interesting happening with, like, the camera work or any of the animation. Right. I still kind of enjoyed it. Like, I kind of liked how these two parts were connected together, because ultimately the plot of the episode, or the general theme of this episode was unrequited love that will never be fulfilled. Because, so with the whole plot with Hina, I think, is meant to be a contrast to Rei and his thing with Akari. Because, I don't know if you remember this, in episode 2... there was a lot of heavy implication that Rei deeply felt something for Akari beyond just being, like, a mother figure.
Right.
Because he was always thinking things like, you know, she's beautiful no matter what setting she's in. She's just this kind, gentle soul.
Yeah. Not something you'd say about your sister.
Yeah, basically. and I think the implication here, and I kind of thought that this was a kind of a subtle way of basically breaking him down, which was the fact that frickin' Nikaido, of all people, is the one that Akari wants to be with.
That is true.
Like, this insanely annoying guy who, like, is no other person would by any means find attractive. And now, before anybody starts saying I'm fat-shaming, I am currently sitting at 260 pounds, so just saying.
Yeah, no...
coming down from 300.
Yeah, which, side note, congratulations. Way to keep training.
No problem. Thank you. But yeah, it's like, I see what they were doing with this episode, I guess is what I'm saying.
So, I don't. Because it basically felt like, I was trying to keep track of the plot. It felt like I could have summarized large segments of it with the comment, silliness ensues. It just felt like, oh boy, these characters sure are wacky. And it didn't seem like there was much meat. Honestly, and Rei felt... Okay, so maybe I came at this show from the wrong direction, but it felt like it was going to be about addressing Rei specifically, addressing his background, his issues, his mental health, whatever. And there was very little to do with Rei, even if he was in every scene. The one exception, like I said, is he has this brief flashback where he remembers it looks like he got sexually assaulted by an older woman.
Right.
And he thinks about that because he thinks about the idea of love, and that is, I guess, what he associates with love. He doesn't have any positive association with romantic he doesn't have any romantic experience. Being a victim of sexual assault is the limit of his romantic experience, which, you know, is a pretty harsh thought, which deserves to be explored at some length other than being immediately washed away by like, oh boy, Hina's bento box sure tastes yucky.
So I'm going to defend that just real quick.
Fine.
Okay. First of all, so I do feel like that's not, because I don't feel like that's something that we're just going to like jump right into, because that's a very serious like subject matter.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And I understand where you're getting at. About the fact that they kind of just gloss over it and immediately go into, girl can't cook, how funny. But I think what it's establishing there is that this is, for a lot, it's not something that he has to deal, like, he's actively thinking about constantly.
Right.
This is an aspect of his life that he is sort of almost come to terms with,
or
in
at
his
least
own
he's
way.
just trying to keep it below the surface.
Right, exactly. Like, he's gonna think, it comes to it whenever he is confronted with situations when he has to, like, observe people in love, or when he's reminded, his mind just immediately goes back to that. So it feels like it's more just, that sequence felt more like an instinctual reaction, rather than just, okay, so let me think back to the time when I got sexually assaulted by who I'm assuming is his mother of some kind. Like a mother figure of his.
I have no idea, because they've done so little to explain his background. It's you can only guess.
Now, I will also say, I'm going to kind of answer your question as well with a question as well. Did you ever see Honey and Clover?
I did a long time ago.
Okay, because this series is written, the original manga was written by the same
I remember
author.
that. Yeah.
Okay, and so the Honey and Clover had a very similar method of writing, where they kept implying things about the past before they finally like went into the meat of it. And so I'm not saying that whether or not that works for you is not really what I'm trying to get at here. I guess what I'm just trying to say is that this is kind of standard for his writing style, and that I guess what I'm just trying to say is, if you want to know more about that, I'm pretty sure we're going to get to that.
I'm not doubting that it'll come up eventually. What bothered me was that short sequence, to me, felt like the only actual meat in the episode. It felt like there was just very little development overall.
Right, and I guess that's fair, because there's not really a lot that happened here.
Yeah.
I guess we also kind of see that Hina is kind of a normal junior high girl. She has a crush on, like, the big popular sports player.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, I would have at least liked to see some more shogi, because Lord knows I still don't understand crap about that.
Yeah, I'm kind of at the point where I'm guessing they're just not ever going to explain it, and it's just something that we are assumed to know.
I understand, and we've discussed that before, but I just want to see it. Like, I think the animations and the shogi Battle of Wit stuff is fun to watch, and I would have liked to see more of it. But
oh
well. Do you want to discuss another hot-blooded sports anime?
Yeah, let's do it.
Scorching Ping Pong
Girls. The hottest,
Girls.
because it's scorching.
It is scorching hot. Scorching Ping Pong Girls, episode 4. So, start out episode 4, and you see that Agari and Koyori, over the last several days, have been playing, basically having rematches, and switching back and forth of who is the number one player on the team. And recently Agari has retaken the throne as the number one player, and she's the ace. Agari is embarrassed by the fact that she's improved so much just because she's playing Koyori, and she doesn't want to admit it and doesn't want Koyori to know, and she blushes a lot. This is followed by an extended period of boring classroom antics and Yuri bait, where they're sort of like implying that Koyori is attracted to Agari, and Agari is like embarrassed by being so attentive to Koyori, blah blah blah. And they also discuss that the captain of the ping pong team is coming back. They go to the practice room, and indeed the captain of the ping pong team is back from somewhere. And So her name eventually is revealed as Kirika. She is has like long black hair. She is shown playing against 2 ping pong robots by herself, and decides that she wants to have a tournament where all 20 players on the team have to play her, and so she will win. Kirika will win the match if she can get 5 points, but her opponent will win the match if they can get a single point. So she starts playing. She beats 18 players in a row with her special technique of the chop, where she induces backspin and forces errors on her opponents. Then there's an extended sequence where Kirika talks about how Muni's breasts are fun to lie on because they are a soft rack pillow.
Yeah.
And then, so by the end, Agari and Koyori are the only opponents left, and Agari promises to defeat her and show her that she's great and going to bring the team to nationals.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just going to jump right in here and say I was not thrilled with this episode.
No. Worst episode by far of this show.
Oh, yeah. This episode was... It was kind of confirming a lot of fears that I had when we first saw the art for it. There were still some interesting little meaty bits, like... I appreciate that they're starting to delve into the fact that Agari doesn't have much... Or, not Agari, Koyori. I don't know why I keep confusing those two. I appreciate the fact that they're delving a little bit more into the fact that Koyori doesn't have much fighting spirit.
Right.
Just on the basis that, you know, she and Agari are keep playing games, and now Agari seems to have the edge up on her. And Koyori doesn't seem to really care that much.
Yeah, she just likes playing ping pong. She doesn't really care if she wins.
Right, and I think the series is gonna start delving into that a little bit more, because Agari seems to have found her own fighting spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, what I liked about it was that I think you assumed too, that once Agari was defeated last episode, she was going to stay the number 2. Koyori was always going to be the ace. She was going to be the best. I like the fact that they immediately did away with that. So now Agari's the best again, but she doesn't need to be the best. And she's not like super distraught and overwhelmed when she loses. So I thought that was a good way of dealing with it. She still wants to be number 1, but it's for different reasons.
I like I like the fact that there is actually like fluidity within this team.
Yeah.
So that it's not just completely set in stone, like, okay, so we have our best, second, third, fourth, which is kind of something I did have a bit of a problem with before. Like, I didn't really like the fact that Koyori was just playing the ranked members on the team, and they were immediately like, oh, well, you're 4th best now.
Exactly.
Like, work your way up to number 3. And it's like, is this like a dojo?
Yeah, it felt like a Pokemon gym where like, well, I'm defeated now, so go ahead.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I'm kind of with you on that. I do like the fact that how they're using that to kind of build up this whole conflict with Koyori, because that's something that the captain brought up. It wasn't even so much that she was disappointed that they couldn't compete with her, because the whole thing with that captain is that she's basically winning all of these games without any contest.
Yeah.
And she's not necessarily disappointed by the fact that she's overtaking them so easily, but it's the fact that none of them are even providing an interesting challenge.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting counterpoint to Koyori, who's kind of looking for the same thing, but the problem is that Koyori just doesn't have that like desire and drive to win, like both Agari and the captain.
Yeah, at its best, Kirika serves as a counterpoint to Agari and Koyori, and they make this pretty explicit when Agari is describing Kirika's style, and she says, "She's my opposite." Okay, well, right. That's right on the nose. But in the way that Agari relies on using loop drives to induce topspin, Kirika uses the chop to induce backspin and force air. So what Agari does is she induces top spin to get a weak return, and then she smashes for victory. Kirika just uses backspin in order to force errors so that her opponents won't even be able to get the ball over the net. So it is fundamentally an opposite, which I thought was a fun style choice in order to, to contrast these, to contrast Kirika against Agari and Koyori so directly. But that's sort of where the fun stuff ends, and I think I want to address some of the things that were more problematic about Kirika and the episode in general. You can start out.
Okay, yeah. So, we're really starting to see the issue with Munamune as a character, or rather her design.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Well, you kind of already touched upon this in the summary with the whole, like, using her breasts as a pillow. Yeah. And just the constant, like, rubbing up against her. And the sort of, like, really awkward, just... It's not needed, okay? This serves no purpose for any of the characters.
Yeah, it doesn't move anything along. There are a bunch of shots with Munamune where she's just standing still holding a ping pong paddle, but in doing so, she's, like, squeezing her breasts together. And you're like,
yeah,
that's exactly what the camera is centered on. And you're just like, come on, this is so not the point, or I hope it's not the point of this show.
Right. It's interesting that you bring that up, too, because there was one particular camera shot that got me, and it was based on the context in which we got it. And it was basically Munamune and Tenka were discussing Koyori's losing streak that she's been having lately. And first we get kind of a median shot of both the characters in frame, and, they're just sort of talking normally. And then what happens is it cuts to a close-up of Munemune's chest, or I think it's over on Tenka's side, and then it shifts over to Munemune's just chest area, and it kind of sticks there for a moment, and then you kind of see her move her hands together, so she's kind of squeezing it, kind of squeezing her chest together, and then the camera moves back up to look at Munamune.
Right.
And it's really distracting to me because, this is supposed to be just a discussion of Koyori's character.
Yeah.
Right now. Did you think we were bored?
Yeah, I know. It sometimes it feels like there's two camps on the production of this show, and like half the people who are making it are trying to drive the plot towards elite ping pong strategy, and the other half are trying to drive it towards ogling cute character designs, and the two sides do not get along, and it's all back and forth.
I mean, otherwise, one thing I did notice, I'm going to go back to a positive here, something about her chop that I really like
Kirika's.
Kirika's chop, is, something I've noticed is I like how all the different shots, that the ball has a different animation for it, so that you can kind of see how distinct they are. So, like, one of the things for the chop is that they're, like, the way they kind of achieved the animation for the chop is that they have a bunch of, like, black lines just going down vertically around it, and then they kind of deform the ball along with those lines, and they spin the lines around the ball, and this is a very distinct motion from what we get from Agari's chop, her drive, rather, where you see how it's we don't get any sort of ball deforming, and it's not as an intense of a shot.
Yeah.
So
the thing with this for me is that all the fun aspects that focused on ping pong were absolutely the exception in this episode. It was a lot of dumb classroom conversations, a lot of perviness, and a lot of, like, Kirika being silly. And her silliness centered around the fact that if you lose to her, you have to wear cat ears and say meow. So apparently this is her thing, that whenever she defeats anyone or anyone, fails one of her tasks, she makes you cosplay. That's what they actually said. And then they just happened to have some memories of Agari dressing up in a bunny outfit and dressing up in a maid outfit. And why don't we go ahead and make those the bumpers so that all the otaku fanboys can save that for,
for, I don't know, like their screensaver?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
or their desktop image.
Yeah, so it was so embarrassingly on the nose, and I don't really want to dwell on this episode any more than I have to, because it was a letdown. It was a real disappointment for me, and I hope that it's the exception, and that once hopefully soon, we'll be getting into the inner junior high tournament, and we'll be able to focus more on the competition again.
Yeah, let's hope so. So, do you want to move on to another series that is uncomfortably pervy?
I don't want to, but I guess we are.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'm talking about Keijo.
Okay.
So the entire plot of this episode is based around all of the girls taking on their opponents within the elite class. So Miyata goes up against Rinrin, Nan goes up against some girl whose name I didn't even catch because the battle was so nothing, and Alba goes up against the number 1 elite. And basically, I don't want to delve too much into the plot summary here, but basically Miyata wins her match by besting her opponent at speed with her own special technique. You get Nan wins her battle because her butt is softer than the ironclad fighter on her end, because basically her whole thing is that she has a butt of iron, she has a butt of steel, and she's able to knock everybody around. So when Nan goes to defend herself, this girl bounces right off of Nan and goes right into the water because her butt is so soft that anything that's super hard bounces off against it. Which I guess is their explanation for why these girls aren't more well-toned.
Okay.
And then Elba actually surprisingly loses her match. Due to the fact that number 1 has an ability called boob hypnosis.
Oh, no.
Where she basically... The whole point of Alba's fight was to essentially build up the number 1 class, as well as also build up the fact that Alba is more of a strategist, and she's better as a leader than she really is as a fighter, because she manages to get all the other girls in this battle royale to basically control the number 1's movements, so that she's backed into a corner. But then the number 1 gets out of it by basically hypnotizing the girls with her boobs.
Oh, no.
And that's pretty much where the episode ends. We have not had Nozomi's fight yet, and that's kind of what the next episode is building up to. So, I was going to leave up the discussion to you, and then it occurred to me, wait, you have nothing to add here, so I'm just going to keep going.
I mean, all I want to say is this just sounds insufferable. I did, however, on Twitter, someone posted an image of the butt of steel, and it was pretty insane. That's my contribution.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, that's really all you need to know. So, the way that Miyata outspeeds her opponent is that she learns a new skill by the name of W acceleration. So the entire method of this technique is that she is able to give herself a wedgie in her swimsuit.
Oh, no.
And because the swimsuit, even though it's already pretty light, it still kind of restricts your motion just a little bit around the buttocks area.
Okay.
And so she gives herself a wedgie, and that apparently frees up her movement enough so that she can move even faster.
So can you tell me why every character doesn't do that?
That is exactly what I was going to bring up.
Okay.
Is why can't every character do this, or why do they design the suits like that?
Yeah.
If they're going to, it's like if the girls are going to give themselves wedgies anyway, is there any? It's like, okay, sure, Miyata figures it out, fine, but there needs to be some discussion within the Keijo board about like changing the regulation swimsuits. I don't know. There wasn't really a whole lot that was going on otherwise. The whole thing about most of the episode focused on Miyata and Rinrin's fight, and the fact that Miyata was having trouble keeping up with Rinrin because basically using her butt gatling requires her to take a hold on her breath because it requires immense concentration. And Rinrin doesn't have that problem because she has, like, better lung capacity. And all I can think to myself during this is, they're going to such lengths to justify this sport.
Yeah, does it feel like it's...
I feel like it really wants to be a sports series, but it's all just an excuse.
So here's the thing. I don't want to dwell on this too much, but in your opinion, do you think a lot of the popularity for Keijo when it came out was the novelty of the premise? Do you think that at this point the novelty is sort of worn off and people are realizing, oh, it's just a subpar anime about a weird thing?
See, now that's the thing, because I don't think so, because it has a lot of hold with the ecchi market right
Oh
now.
no.
Yeah, and so so it's gotten a lot of popularity in that, just for the fact that it's a very fan servicey series, and fan servicey series are kind of hot right now. And
Yeah, I guess they're doing.
I think it's just gonna, and I've kind of discussed this before. It's at least interesting in the sense that they don't just go like they kind of earn the fan service, because they have very, like, outside of like just the sheer insanity of everything that's going on, the girls themselves are also like, they aren't animated in a way that's very obviously fan servicey, if that makes any sense. Like, I feel like they have a better sense of how girls actually look and how they move around. So I think I mentioned this before. Like, the boobs don't just jiggle independently.
Right. So I
guess
another. I guess what I'm asking though is that a lot of the attention came from people who weren't normally into ecchi shows. So for people who are not there for the fan service, do you think it works on any level?
Oh goodness,
okay. No. All right, fair enough.
No. This is a bad series, and unless you are really into ecchi fan service type things, ignore it.
Yeah, maybe watch one episode to understand what the talk is about. But even,
I mean, honestly, I would honestly say if you watch an episode of the show, it would probably be this one, because this is the one that has, like, because the fights themselves are pretty decently animated. Like, I actually kind of appreciate the fact that they use a lot of long shots, like, to watch the characters, like, battle it out. Because a lot of series have a tendency to go, like, really close in, and and they do a lot of, like, really, like, quick cuts to kind of save on the animation. Right. But the series actually has the confidence enough in its animation to kind of keep the camera away from them and just let the battle play out.
Interesting. So
this episode in particular was very good about that.
Well, that's something.
Yeah, it's something. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. Like, if you are specifically looking for an ecchi type series, you could do worse.
Okay, but Matt, if you're specifically looking for an ecchi type series, you already know about Keijo. Like, you know,
right, exactly.
And you're already watching.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue that otherwise.
All right, so you want to move on to another show with an incredibly deep plot? Long Riders. All right, so Long Riders episode 3. Remember, because last week they did not air an episode, so this week we have episode 3. Starts off, Amy is getting new equipment. She's trying to get more stuff for cycling bit by bit so that she can look more like a legitimate cycler. She and the other 3 girls decide to take a more difficult route, and they go up Yabitsu Pass, which is effectively just a very large hill nearby, with some historic landmarks. So Amy gets halfway up the hill, and at this point, Hinako and Yayoi have already left them behind, but Amy gets a cramp halfway up the hill, and she tries to stretch, she tries to drink water, but she ends up getting a cramp in another leg, and they have to quit. She's really embarrassed, and then the other 3 girls spend a long time discussing back and forth how worried they are for Amy and whether she'll take it too hard. But Amy doesn't take it too hard. She decides that she's going to train harder and defeat the Yabitsu Pass. So later, Aoi and Amy are going on like a training ride together, and they run into another cyclist with long black hair who is very good at cycling up hills. And then they get tackled by her dog, and her dog, this random cyclist dog, licks Amy in the face a lot. And then they talk with this random cycler again, and Amy learns for the first time why road bikes are better than folding bikes at being bikes. And that's pretty much the end of the episode, and so Amy may or may not get a road bike soon. And that's it. And I have to admit, I might have missed it, but I don't think they ever... So it's clear that this girl they meet on the hill is going to be the 5th member of their group that doesn't exist yet. I did not catch her name. I'm not sure if they ever actually introduced the character.
No, they never did. I didn't catch a name either.
So that's the same tactic they took with Hinako and Yayoi, where they ran into these girls out on the trail, and then they separately ran into them again at college. So I assume at the beginning of next episode, they're going to run into this girl at the school and be like, "Whoa, you go here too?" And then Hinako's gonna say like, now we have 5. Maybe we should do a flesh together. So we'll see.
So something I wanted to bring up is this is not really that related to this episode in particular, but this was something I just noticed while watching this episode. Have you noticed that the group of girls in this are basically the exact same as the group of girls in Scorching Ping Pong Girls?
Oh, no. Yeah, I mean, it's not that, but, like, some of them definitely, like, yeah, you're totally right, because Yayoi is Mune Mune.
Hinako is blatantly Tenka.
Yeah, this
honestly,
new girl is clearly Kirika. Like, in terms of her design and her general attitude and the way she talks.
Honestly, Aoi is basically Agari in the sense that she's a little bit more serious. She kind of serves as being the best friend to the main character. And she's got I just noticed this, just a slightly curvier body type than the main character.
She's the most different, I'd say, because she's like a lot more naturally kind than Agari, I think.
Well, yeah, that's fair. I will give you that. But they're both basically the cool girl. I'll give you that they're kind of the biggest stretch there. Because Amy is basically Koyori in the fact...
100%.
Yeah, basically in the sense that they're very much the every girl type character.
Yeah. And
so yeah,
thankfully there is no parallel for Hokuto, so... Nobody has to talk about panties, thank goodness.
Other than that, there was
nothing happened.
I guess I kind of nothing happens. Like I did kind of appreciate that there's a little bit more conflict in this one.
Yeah.
Like I appreciate the fact that there's a little with Amy, with the fact that she's starting to get down on herself about the fact that she's unable to keep up with people, and, it's not really meant to be a competition.
Right. I mean, so I like that on one level, but the execution was all contained within the episode. It was, Amy was disappointed that she got a cramp and was a little embarrassed, but then she decided, I guess I'll train more. And that was the answer. It's like, real creative choice there. The other issue for me is that these girls are such bad friends that they never told her that a folding bike is terrible at going up hills. Like, the tires on Pontakun, Amy's bike, are half as big as the tires on the other people's bikes. And they're like, oh man, why is she going so slow? It's like, because she has a child's bike, and you have a professional racer's bike. Like, what do you think? And it's just weird. I know they're trying to sort of reveal the details of how biking works bit by bit, but that just doesn't even, like, all of these girls are good at cycling, and it just doesn't feel in touch with their characters as good cyclists to not even mention that.
I could have almost seen it as they had tried to explain this to her.
Yeah,
first.
And she had just said, like no, I love Pontakun too much, or something.
And then meeting this other girl would have led her to be like, okay, like, maybe I do need to, if I really want to keep this up, maybe I do need to look into upgrading Pontakun or something like that. But yeah, you're right. The fact that these girls just don't even bring it up at all is just, it's very weird.
Yeah. It was not a good episode. You can see why there's some issues with production because the story doesn't make a ton of sense. And one other thing is the animation is all over the place in this episode.
Okay, good. I'm glad you brought that up.
It
so
was
I didn't have
like
to.
I'm not the one who I don't get hung up on differences in animation. Like, people complain about, where things slip in Yuri on Ice and where they cut corners on some of the figure skating. I don't really notice that because I can see what they're going for. This was just sloppy. The character designs were all over the place, very inconsistent. Some places it looked really detailed. Some places it looked like, somebody sketched it on the back of a napkin. It was bad.
Oh yeah, no, I remember the shot that the shot about like the napkin sketches that really catches me, that really like caught my eye, was when when Amy is wrestling with the dog on the ground, and you see the new girl kind of walk in, and you kind of see them sort of a little bit from afar, but not from that far, and it's like the two characters are like meshed together.
Yeah.
Like, and they have like two frames to like signify the fact that these two, like, that Amy and this dog are wrestling.
Yeah, it was bad. It was ugly. There was nothing interesting about the episode that you couldn't have done in about 7 minutes. So the fact that the production is clearly running into trouble is not a sign of good things to come. I think we'll probably be watching this show fall apart, which, is its own kind of fun. But I want to move on to a show that is surprisingly not falling apart. Tiger Mask. All right, so we're on Tiger Mask episode 5. So Naoto, otherwise known as Tiger Mask, decides that he should join New Japan Pro Wrestling. And this is established immediately. He says, oh, I guess I'll join New Japan Pro Wrestling so that I can get more experience. And everyone says, okay.
Cool.
He goes to a match and he sees this other competitor named Fukuwara Mask, who is basically a wrestling clown who tricks people into getting defeated by him. And then Naoto wins his first match by getting a suplex, just like always.
There you go.
Separately, Takuma, otherwise known as Tiger the Dark, is pissed off because Tiger Mask is getting all the notoriety, and he's more likely to get Yellow Devil to fight Yellow Devil, so obviously Takuma doesn't know that Naoto's Tiger Mask. So Takuma starts fighting too hard, and his companions take umbrage to this, so the Global Wrestling Monopoly wrestlers arrange a battle royale where they're all going to gang up on Takuma. Separately, Naoto gets included in a 10-man battle royale with the NJPW wrestlers. So in the Japanese battle royale, Fukuwara tricks a bunch of people into losing, and Tiger Mask suplexes a bunch of people into losing. And eventually they're the last two standing, so they're grappling, and then Tiger Mask accidentally elbows Fukuwara Mask in the face and breaks his nose, and then Fukuwara shows his true power. Turns out he's actually a good wrestler, but it doesn't really matter because Naoto just suplexes him and wins.
Right. Well, I mean, he's Tiger.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, he can't lose.
And then separately, so everyone in America is ganging up on Takuma in their fight there, but he beats them all by kicking them out of the ring, and he ends up having to fight their boss man. That's his name. That's the character's name. His name is Boss Man. And he does a bear hug on Takuma, but then Takuma elbows him in the face, and you guessed it, suplexes him. So that's the end of the episode. Basically, it's showing these parallel battle royales where Tiger Mask and Tiger the Dark win, so they both get more notoriety. The end.
Okay, so I had a general question about this episode. Okay. Were we supposed to know who Fukuwara was at the end of the episode? I know,
so it showed, it like revealed him. I wasn't sure if that's supposed to be Takuma's dad, because it kind of looked like him.
Me?
But he had a beard in this, and, he doesn't actually... It did very much look like we were supposed to recognize this person, or maybe, like...
The only other thing I can think of is that they're setting it up. Yeah, I was just thinking, like, maybe the only other thing I can think of is, like, maybe they're setting this up for, like, this guy's going to start being a major character from here on out.
Yeah, and he'll appear separately, like, not as Fukuwara Mask.
Right, but... I don't know. That was one of the things I guess I just didn't get that.
Yeah, so I'm not sure whether it's something we missed along the way or if it's a reference to the old show. Because, like,
Right.
you know, that crossed my mind, like, what if he's the original Tiger Mask? Which
Right.
would be hilarious.
Okay, yeah.
But I don't actually think that's the case.
Right. Doubtful. I'm guessing they don't want to dishonor the memory of Tiger Mask by having a fighter who kind of fights dirty.
Yeah. Turn him into a clown.
With, like...
Yeah, for what purpose? Yeah. I don't know. Overall, what did you think?
It wasn't terrible. Like, I'm glad to see... I was really worried after last episode that the animation quality would start taking a dip again. It's generally fine, is what I'll say. It's definitely better than those first couple episodes that were real rough. But I feel like the suplexes are starting to keep their impact, which was a problem I was really having with, like, again, those first two episodes.
Yeah. I don't know.
There was one...
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay. There were definitely some moments where I was watching this and I was thinking, okay, guys, come on. When Tiger the Dark is being ganged up on and they're holding him and they're beating him up, there's like 2 frames of animation for that, and they keep cycling them.
It's just them doing a super minimal karate chop against his chest.
And they do this for like 30 seconds.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, that wasn't great. Going along with Tiger the Dark as well, this is another issue I'm having with this. What's his plan?
Yeah, I don't know.
So I understand he's infiltrating this evil, wrestling monopoly. Like, I get that. Have we ever actually seen him do anything to achieve his goal of actually bringing them down? Because it seems like all he really wants to do is fight Tiger Mask.
Well, he doesn't just want to fight Tiger Mask. He wants to gain notoriety so that he can meet Yellow Devil. I think that's what I'm getting, is that, like, he's not so much interested in destroying the organization as he is in getting to meet Yellow Devil. And if he becomes an elite wrestler, he'll meet Yellow Devil and then he can exact his revenge or whatever.
Okay, fair enough.
But again, you're right. It is not explicit, and it's even not clear. I might be misinterpreting.
Right. Okay, fair enough. I kind of liked Fukuwara.
Yes, Fukuwara Mask was awesome. I liked him as a character. It was very funny to see a wrestler who subverted the narrative, subverted the norms of what it means to be a pro wrestler in this weird world. I thought it was fun. Overall, the animation and the pressure and the hits took a significant cut from the fight against Red Death Mask. We're sort of right. Like, there's never going to be a comparison to the fight against Red Death Mask. Like, that will probably be the best fight we'll see in this show.
I will argue they may go all out once Yellow Devil makes a reappearance.
I hope.
I could see that.
I hope so.
That episode, I could see them doing it.
But we're not going to see it for a while.
No,
so
we are not.
That definitely, we got proof here that episode was was not the rule.
Was
it was
the
exception, not the rule. Thank you.
Okay, so I hate to cut it off here because I'm assuming we don't really have much else to say about Tiger Mask.
Nothing
constructive. Go on to another series that's constantly disappointing us.
I don't know. I kind of actually like this one, but anyway. So All Out episode 4. So this is basically the end of the match against Keijo, where it begins by Oharano is able to predict the Keijo movements. Since he's such an elite player, he ends up dropping the ball and kicking and scoring the first 3 points. And then he develops a rivalry against Miyuki. Ebumi, who is this sort of delinquent character on the Kanagawa Jinku team. He wants to get in the game, but Sekizan won't let him because he never shows up to practice, and then he's embarrassed, and then we move on. Keijo ends up figuring out Jinku's strategy, and they're basically unstoppable because they have stronger players who are able to move along the wings without getting stopped. Eventually, Sekizan realizes his team is demoralized, and he pulls Gion into the game just to get him some experience. everyone reacts by saying their aura changed because Gion steps on the pitch. Gion has a couple attempts where he tries to tackle people. He's not able to, but he is able to impress people with his attempt. They end up losing dramatically. Gion never gets a good tackle on anybody despite his attempts. But they tell him that he made a good effort, basically, in the end. So, what were your issues with this show?
I guess I just had several questions. Like, pretty much all my notes for this episode are just questions. And some of these are pretty basic, like, who is number 10? Who was the guy who was introduced to us at the beginning of the episode, who is the newcomer who knows about rugby?
Oharano, yeah.
Okay. And then I had some more general questions. So, they're making a really big deal about winning this game, or at least doing well in this game, right? And all I can think to myself is, what are the stakes to this?
Yeah, I think it's just pride stuff.
Right, and it's... you can do pride fine.
But explain it.
Right, like... Okay, so going back to Haikyu here, in the very first game we see in the series, beyond just the introduction game of Kageyama and Hinata, the first real game we see is Hinata and Kageyama are essentially trying to win so that they can stay on the team because they don't get along. In, let's see, another good example would be in Ice Shield 21, when Senna is playing against the Ojo Knights. He doesn't really want to be in the game, so that works fine, but towards the end of the game he realizes, I really want to try and win this one because I'm actually able to compete with this very talented player. In this game, though, I don't really see any of that. I don't see anything that's really going to majorly affect the characters in the long run.
So I
don't see why to care.
Yeah, so I 50% agree with you. It didn't execute itself in a way that made most of these characters very interesting, but there were a few things I liked, and which I thought took it a little above the performance it had in previous weeks. One, I liked that Gion failed. They could have brought him in to be like a rugby prodigy. Like, that's one of the ways they could have done it. That's sort of a common trope. But he wasn't a rugby prodigy. Even though he had developed this secret technique, basically all it did was confuse Tyra on the other team briefly, and then Tyra's momentum just like kicked him aside. So it's not like tackling him by the ankle was just going to change the game. So I liked that he lost. He wasn't able to catch up to people, and he was really embarrassed at the end that he sucked at rugby. So it kind of forces him. This is a contrast to Days, where they make Tsukamoto like a super success wonder boy from the beginning. In this one, Gion sucks, and he realized in his first try, oh my gosh, I didn't think I sucked, but I actually suck. So hopefully...
Like, who would have guessed that not playing rugby for all these years would actually mean I would kind of suck at it? And I'm saying that sarcastically, but I do see where you're coming from.
You know, they didn't have to go that way, but I like that they did, because it's probably going to force him to be more humble, and you get to see some interesting character growth. So for me, that was the big thing. I didn't see much from the other characters, except for hopefully they'll flesh out Ibumi moving on, of like, he's a delinquent who's really good at rugby, but he hates practicing. But hopefully he got embarrassed by Sekizan too, who refused to let him play, because Sekizan said, I don't care if you're the best, you haven't earned the right to score a goal, or to get a try, when everyone else is working hard and you just get to get the glory. So hopefully that will be some interesting backstory, and you get to see him earn his way onto the team, even though he's already the best. So I thought that was sort of a fun aspect. It didn't dominate the episode, but I liked where those two characters were, and so that was enough for me, because I haven't really liked where any of the characters were up till now.
Okay, and I think that's fair, because I was getting very caught up in the stakes. I also get very caught up in the character designs, which
it's not going to get
me
good.
In the sense,
like,
right. I guess it's just really hard for me to take some of the more dramatic moments seriously, because, so you have characters like Gion and Sekizan and Ibumi, who look, I mean, okay, so Sekizan has this kind of weird, like, silver, like, horn there, and that's a little weird, but beyond that, like, you have some characters who look pretty reasonable, and then you have characters with, like, devil horn hair, and a guy who I can only describe as having a bean head.
Yeah. He had like the shape of some of these guys' skulls is not human. I got it.
Yeah, and it's just it's kind of distracting for me.
I don't know. Overall, I think it took a step in the right direction, though. Like, it was so bottom of the barrel up till now. It was just so by the numbers and not even well executed by the numbers that I was getting very bored. And this at least gave me a few things to latch on to.
That's fair. And something I will defend the series for is that, regardless of any of the complaints I have, the animation is still pretty decent. It's really fun to watch the characters collide with one another. There's a really nice moment where I think when Tyra's getting tackled, and at the moment of impact, we actually get a shot of, first we get like a burst of cloud, and then it pans over to us watching Tyra get like knocked over. And I thought that was a nice way to like keep the energy moving during the game.
Yeah.
And that was a kind of a creative way to like show the impact without just a straight up here's a shot of a guy getting tackled. Because it lets us see like the power first and then what actually happened.
All right, so we're about to run out of time, so I need to jump to Days, and we'll be very brief. Okay. Right, so Days episode 5, the first 4 minutes are recap because this is a crappy show. The rest, it's basically the match between Seikon and Seiseki. It doesn't quite finish it yet, but at the beginning you get to see Tyra be awesome. Higuchi on Seikon schools all of his opponents and then tells them that Tsukamoto is better at soccer just to put salt in the wound. And then Kazuma realizes that his long since separated mother is standing and watching him play, and he hasn't seen her in 8 years, so he ends up playing the game of his life, but in the process someone steps on his foot and he breaks something in his right ankle. He then gets a free kick, but kicks it in with his left foot, and he tries to play injured, but Tsukamoto identifies the fact that Kazuma is injured because he knows him so well, and they take Kazuma out of the game, and Kazuma says, I know you think you were doing the right thing, but I'll never forgive you for this. But Tsukamoto is determined to win anyway, and he puts on his determined face, so now we get to see Tsukamoto version 2 replacing Kazuma in the field. I don't know. I thought it was a little cheap that they included this long-lost mother figure now, after, well over a dozen episodes that's never been brought up before, and try to make her this important motivation for Kazuma that he would never forgive his best friend for.
To be fair, that fits with the entire... That is pretty consistent with how the show deals with
we see this every week. Yeah. Oh my gosh, where is this coming from? You can't pretend like we're supposed to believe this now. The animation was okay. Some of the goals were fun. I thought the free kick was well executed. It actually showed some soccer strategy for once, which was interesting in the way the free kick was done. Yeah. The soccer was surprisingly fine. It looked like some people knew some rules, but the narrative just wasn't there, and I didn't buy into the motivation for Kazuma. And I also don't buy into Tsukamoto being totally unaffected by his best friend saying he hates him.
I think because I think this is supposed to contrast with the whole thing with... So when we saw Tsukamoto cry like a couple other episodes ago, where he's realizing that if he wants to be a part of the team, he's gonna have to like make sure that somebody else stays off the team, and Jin's the one who confronts him about this, and he's like, no matter what happens, we're friends, and so we're immediately seeing how like it's like, okay, so Tsukamoto has to realize that he has to sacrifice Jin if he wants to keep playing on this team. Like, that's fine. I actually like that conflict, but yeah, just the whole fact that we're being thrown into this whole like melodrama about Jin's mother out of nowhere. Also, the fact that Jin apparently can play fine with a broken foot. That kind of got on my nerves.
Yeah, you physically can't run that fast when something snapped in your ankle. He's not a Superman. The show keeps doing this where if you just work hard enough, you can be elite. Like, no, sometimes your body breaks. Anyway, so Days continues to be disappointing in all the ways it's always been disappointing. And I think that's about all the time we have for this week, Matt. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it as always. I look forward to next week. And in the meantime, Matt, could you hit the credits for me? Our logo design is by James Ratcliffe. The theme music is Fly High by Burnout Syndromes, covered and performed by Luke Bartka. You can follow KoshienCast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and our email is koshienCast@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We'll be back next week with the best and worst from the world of sports anime, and until then, keep training.